Hi, how are you? I am Michael Ingui from Ingui Architects. We're located in New York City. We do a lot of work in New York City, Brooklyn, outside of the city, but very often we're doing a lot of work on historic masonry retrofits, townhouses. Very often they're in historic designated districts. So um, the title of my talk is Breathing New Life into Historic Homes. So again, the typology we have 3 and 4 and 5, maybe even 6-story houses that are all masonry construction, very close to each other. Party walls, they're historic. The front facades are protected very often, and we've developed a technique that we like a lot for Passive House. And some of the people you see on the screen here were really helpful. We've got great people in the office. We're 25 people. A bunch of the project managers have spent countless hours on some of the details you're about to see, and it's been a lot of fun. Some more examples of some houses that we're working on. So both these houses have historic front facades that we restored, slightly modern interiors. We do a lot of these that have had traditional interiors. In fact, I'll wind up talking about that later on in the presentation. But the project on the left is a house where we added the mansard on the roof. We've added a rear addition. That's the existing front facade with almost no work on it except for the front windows. You'll actually see the door of this house in a future presentation. That's a Passive House, soon to be Passive Plus because we're about to put solar on the house. The house on the right is one of 4 colonnade houses in Brooklyn Heights. It's pretty heavily protected. Landmarks loves these houses. This house was leaking. It was performing horribly. And so Passive House, again, it's breathing new life into these houses. These are houses that if you couldn't do these things, they'd want a newer house. They'd want a house where they were warm and comfortable. So now they can have both. And in New York City, we have a lot of old housing stock. So really to get it right and to make it work in a way where you walk into these houses and you cannot tell they're a Passive House is really important. So that's usually where I start my conversation, whether I'm talking to people about Passive House who are in the community or to new clients. And I say that Passive House really influences our details. It helps our details. I usually say that Passive House has a lot of benefits. So they're comfortable. They're easy to operate. They're incredibly quiet indoors. I do not hear the garbage truck outside in the front windows. I have sealed envelopes, so I've got pest control all around the house. I don't get dust or some of the other items that are outside. I have filtered fresh air 24/7, dry cellars. I minimize mechanicals in these houses. So if I can do this and other architects could do this, and if you could have that, every client wants it. So when you say that, wow, I can have a house in New York City without bugs and dust, they didn't know to ask the question. And that's a key piece for me. People do not know what question to ask. They didn't know they can get filtered fresh air 24/7. They didn't know that they can get houses that didn't have bugs and dust in New York City. They didn't know that there was a possibility to not hear street noise. And because of that, and because they don't know what Passive House is, they don't know about the benefits. But once they do, they want it. They want it at any cost. They just didn't know it was possible. So it's really important. And then I get to the point that, yeah, it's an energy efficient house and you save 70 to 80% of your cooling and heating needs. So you get to enjoy these benefits while you're saving the environment. But that comes last because people want to know what's in it for them. What are the benefits? They believe in the environment, but they want to know what the benefits are. So describing it to them that way and describing it early, they buy into the whole process. They're excited about the process. And the next question is, well, great, but how much does it cost? Well, not only just about money, but about space. I don't have boilers. I don't have boiler flues. In New York City, our flues have to go all the way up these masonry walls, 4 or 5 or 6 stories. It's expensive. They're always old. They're never in good condition. I don't have in-floor heating. I don't have radiators everywhere. I don't have radiator pipes where they never belonged in the first place. And a lot of these houses didn't have these radiators, didn't have these pipes. So they're cutting through plaster ceilings and doing horrible things. I don't have radiator piping. I don't have lots of elaborate control systems. So it's a lot of stuff to not have to pay for. It's a lot of stuff to not have to deal with as a designer. It creates a tremendous amount of design freedom. I mean, the two pictures here show massive walls of glass that perform incredibly well, and allow you to use the house where I don't have to deal with a radiator there or other items. So for a designer, it really does help. And for the type of projects that we do, which are mostly single family, they're higher end renovations, it's a no-brainer. It's an easy one. The only people who are not doing a passive house for someone doing a mid to high level renovation are the people who didn't know it existed. Once they do, you're doing a passive house. More benefits onto that design freedom. Same photo, you can kind of get a closer look. There's no radiators. You've got those nice doors to the left, great balcony setup. Almost no mechanicals. Just those two ducts kind of in the back where you can see the grill. Nice kitchen space. And in New York City, where it gets to, in Fahrenheit, minus 18 degrees, it gets cold, bitterly cold. This is my house, so I understand that it's true. My air conditioning and heating is off. My breaker is turned off on my heat pump. So there's no heat on in the house. It's been sunny for 3 or 4 days before that. It's 71 degrees inside on a north-facing room, which is our bedroom, and the real field temperature is 18 degrees. So that's a game changer, and one I don't know that we all spend too much time talking about. But what if the houses don't need heat anymore? The whole fight about coal or gas or oil and how you deal with that. What if the house doesn't need heat? It's huge. So coming back into benefits, and I show this slide to a lot of clients, there's nothing wrong with these joists. These are floor joists going into brick walls. There's nothing structurally unstable about them. There's no reason to spend the money fixing them. They're fine. They'll be fine for another 100 years. They're not great for fireproofing, so sometimes we would put the foam in there to make sure that you've got some good fire rating from house to house. But that's not going to stop the air. It's not going to stop the bugs and the dust. And that's a lot of infiltration. So what you're seeing on the right is a retrofit. These are existing joists with sistered new joists next to them. We've sanded them. We've put, in this case, a Stowe Gold product, but there's a lot of liquid applied products out there now. And we've done some rapid seal around the joists, and that's the extra time passive house takes. So it's really one person, maybe two, doing all that work while you're doing everything else in the house. And it's just taking that extra care to really air seal these masonry retrofits. And we've had clients who might pull other aspects of passive house, but they won't pull this. Once they realize that you can have this, and there's not that raceway for all the things you don't want. And I describe to people what happens in a typical house when you put your exhaust fan on and you've got all that air leaving your house, and somehow that air's got to come back in your house. So where's the air coming from? It's coming from places you would never put your finger. It's just coming from horrible places, and all the dust that comes from there, and everything else that comes from there. So if you can seal it and then put a fresh air system in, well, then you're set. Coming back to my fresh air system, that's my segue. You've got your filtered fresh air 24/7. People don't know they can have it. So again, it's a simple system. It works well. We live near a highway. I change my filters 4 times a year. It's amazing how dirty they get. My wife does not use her allergy medication in our house, and she has her whole life. So it has a huge difference. The house on the left is not mine. That's a fun project that I like to show, because that house has an ERV, energy recovery ventilator, and it's a fresh air system. So this house was for sale, and lots of people walked in, and everybody's like, "Ah, this house smells so good. It smells so good." Well, and they're looking at the green wall. The green wall smells. You go up to it, you can smell the moss, you can smell the dirt. But the fresh air system just makes the house just smell incredible. It's crisp, it's beautiful, but it's funny. It's the visual of the green wall that helps a lot. So benefit of the quiet homes. In New York City, this is just huge. Street noise is a big, big deal. And we live very close to each other. So we use passive house windows on every project, just to be able to eliminate the street noise. Again, people didn't know they could do it. The passive house windows don't cost a lot more, so it's really helpful. And then we get to the point where a lot of people are coming to us not asking for passive, but they're asking for a net zero home. They're asking for a zero positive home if they can even get it. And that's great. And we love it. I don't care what you call it. It's great that they want this, but you can't get it unless you're doing a passive house first. And whether you want to call it passive house or something else, you've got to build the better box. And once you build the better box, at least in New York City, where in many places you have limited roof area to put these solar panels on, then you're reducing your needs enough where it is the path to net zero. And people really get this. They understand it very, very quickly. And again, once you describe it to them this way, they bought in, which is great. So I'm not going to talk a lot about kind of the minimal details of kind of what we've done. I've got other presentations where I've done that, which I think a few people have probably seen, where we talk about our process and so forth. What I am going to talk about are just some of the challenges, because in New York City, what's been great, and I think it's happening everywhere else, and it's been in New York longer than it's been here. It's where we learned how to do what we're doing. But what's fun about it right now, where we are, and other people may be used to this, is now people are getting used to it. I've got lots of contractors who know how to do passive house. I mean, other architects I work with, and I talk about it all the time. They've got contractors, we've got contractors. So in New York City, there's a lot of people that we know who know how to do this now, and we've got a lot of companies who are now selling to New York City architects windows and doors and products. So we're no longer asking ourselves, well, God, how am I going to do a passive house? Or should I do a passive house? Or who wants to do a passive house? Now a lot of clients are coming to us wanting passive houses as well. So we've graduated to the, okay, well, now I know how to do a passive house. How do I do it better? How do I solve the difficult thing that I couldn't solve before? What companies got this that I couldn't do before? And it's just been so much fun. And we include a lot of other architects and passive house designers in the conversation, people who are kind of much better at that conversation than I am. So it's fun to tag along. So this is one project where we had a very tight, very difficult historic door, where we've got the historic surround that was in great shape. The door was in horrible shape. You can't really tell from the photo. Looks better than it is, but the door was in bad shape. It also wasn't the original door. So then the landmarks wanted us to match the original door, and you can see the profiles there. So this is a company called Zola that makes a great door. There's a few other people who make a similar door. It's a really tight fit. So it's a passive house door in a historic opening. Works really well. Once we've done it here, now I use the passive house doors on all the projects, because I've got my triple pane window. We've got added security benefit because just for the energy performance, they're delaminating the glass. I've got my triple point locking because, again, for the performance level, you want to have them tight. So again, the passive house doors are really helpful, and they're definitely, in fact, maybe even in New York City at least, cheaper than a custom door that would have been built otherwise, because the passive house door companies, all the doors have this. So it's not as if I'm asking for extra stuff that goes on top of it. And then we're doing a lot of work with skylights. The Lamelux is one of the companies we use. We use a few others, but we have a lot of historical leaded glass products. So having these skylights that work really well, we've got a lot of large skylights that used to be monster energy hogs, and just all the air leaving all this heat that you're trying to keep in your house just flowing right out. And it's been really nice to have them. It's opened up a lot of possibilities. What you're looking at here is you're looking at a restored skylight that where the glass was installed on a stop after we did the passive house skylight. Same with the windows here. These are historic casement doors or windows with leaded glass that was failing horribly. We took the glass out. We had it restored at a local place in Brooklyn, really great leaded glass place. We had our new tilt-turn windows installed. They're definitely thicker front to back, but side to side, they're the same profile. They were able to match everything perfectly. Triple pane, performed well. Top and bottom locking, which is also great. And then we simply slid in our leaded glass panels, and you just cannot tell the difference from the interior. And for the record, this is in a house that is not a passive house. This is a house where we had so much historic and wonderful woodwork that people would have killed us if we gutted it enough to do a passive house. And then it's a whole conversation about embodied carbon, and should you be tearing apart these beautiful old houses enough to do a passive house? Well, the answer is usually no. But there's lots of things you can do to those houses using your passive house details and your passive measures. And in this case, it was better windows, it was better taping and use of product around the windows, better insulation to try to break the thermal bridges where we could. And we've reduced the heating and cooling needs of this building by 50%. So again, you could take what you've learned and not go all the way and still do just wonders for these old buildings. And this is again would be a building where people would have said, okay, I got to keep my leaded glass, but I can't heat my house properly. I'm out. So it's been really, really helpful. Some good solutions that weren't around before and now are. And again, we're going to go backwards now. Going back to this, we learned about this solution from another architect in Germany when I went to the Passive House Institute's conference. They did the same detail there. One of the things that I love about the community is just that they share so well, and it's so open. So again, this is not my detail. So thank you for the person who did that wonderful presentation in Germany. Coming back to mansard roofs and solutions and problems. This mansard and this dormer had to be a very specific size. It was never going to be thick enough to get real passive house details. It was not going to perform well. And this is where I really, and I've got a slide that I talk about this a little bit later, this is where having your passive house consultant and really the benefit of PHVP and running it through your passive house software is fantastic for architects. Because what happens is I don't have to guess about whether I got it right. I know I didn't. I know there's not enough insulation here. I mean, we cut out the thermal bridges where we could, and our passive house consultant was great, and our contractor in this case was M2 was great. But what we did was we beefed it up all around it. We made up for that loss because we knew we had it, because we were able to run it through the program. And I'm not guessing anymore. I'm not wondering whether I'm going to get moisture through there or I caused a problem. And we really worked out kind of in sketch form where we would have issues and where we had to pay attention. And you spend a little bit more time. But coming back to the benefit of passive house as an architect, at least in New York, it's a liability issue. And a lot of times we think we've got it right, but we're not sure. So having your passive house consultant on board and running it through the program is really, really helpful. Here's another detail of that same thing. You can see we kept the cornice on the bottom. We put in a little bit of a place for the drainage to go and kind of work that out. We definitely have some good outboard insulation where we could, just the walls aren't as robust as we'd all want them to be. Coming back into solutions that I wish I knew about forever ago, and I could have if I really tried. So I'm sharing because someone else shared. Removing that front joist from that front wall and just moving it over by one piece of insulation. In this case, we're showing some blocking between some typical rigid insulation that you could buy at the local hardware store. But now they have structural insulation, which is even better, and I don't even need the blocking, so I can get one clean piece of insulation there. But what's great about breaking that thermal bridge is I've got my cold brick going into my joist, which goes into my floor, which goes into the next joist, into the floor, and eventually it gets warm. Well, the radiator that you had there at the beginning, half its job is just heating up your building materials, and half that heat's finding its way back outside. So it's kind of a waste. So if all you did was move that joist from just that wall to just the inside, you've broken the thermal. You've broken it thermally. You saved a lot of money, a lot of time. You can get rid of the radiator now. You do that in combination with some of the air sealing techniques and some of the other items, and you're in a good place. The other thing that I don't think I talk about much, but in this presentation, but we talk about elsewhere, is really paying attention and being honest with yourself about the quality of your brick. How much moisture is going to come through this old brick, and how much heat did that brick used to get in order to dry out, and not over insulating that wall, even if it is a passive house, which we don't do in our houses because we are honest with ourselves and we test that brick and we check it out. And you've got to let the brick dry the way it used to. So this is fun, and I think it's probably one of the last project things I've got on here, which is it's a house we're doing now. I'll kind of blow through this fast because I think I'm killing it, not in a good way, on time. But it's a house where we have 3 exposures, which is bad. It'd be so much better if it was a typical row house and I had just 2 exposures, front and back. But I've got a 50-foot long exposure, and I've got a plaster crown that nobody wants to remove. That's also falling a little bit. You can kind of see some of the cracks there. So We obviously do not want to remove it. We want to try to save it. And this is where building type, one of the people that we use quite a bit, has been helpful. Kevin Brennan helped a little bit in the detail as well. And then the contractor was great, SMR. Working with the right contractors who are great carpenters who like to do this stuff is so important. So what we did was we helped support the crown. We put blocking in between the joists, which also helped us pin up the crown and support it. But it also helped us air seal. So when you go to the next one, you can see some of that blocking up there. You can start to see some of that tape. We're using a plaster as our airtight layer, and we're starting to tape around that and keep it. So not only is the crown firmly secured, so it's not going to keep falling because it's plaster, but it is now air sealed really well. And here you can see kind of, you've got the Intello kind of going around. You've got our plywood window opening, so that just letting those windows just slide right in, and you can see some of that rock sole that's just between the floors. One, it helps with sound, but two, it helps with some of that insulation you might want to use otherwise. You can also see the blue tape there. This is blown in insulation. It's dense packed cellulose, and it worked out really well. The numbers hit well below 1 on this project, even in its initial blower door test, and it's performing really, really well. Same house, historic stair, perfect condition. We would never rip it out. So you can see what we've done. We've actually done, and by the way, the liquid apply membranes for us have been kind of a game changer, where just using them and being able to have them, in this case, go up and actually wrap up into the stair. And actually, I think I've got it in the next one. We've got it, we're using the plaster as our airtight layer here. We're not removing that plaster from the party wall. And we're actually using the plaster, and we're actually going to wind up taping it to that wood right there and just trying to get it as cleanly as we can. You can see a little bit more of a detail of that liquid applied going under the stair. You can also see that we're using some of the underside of that stair to get our Zender ERV tubes up. So utilizing the space where we can. This is finished now. You cannot tell that the stair was ever anywhere else. So coming through, the importance of the feedback loop. The feedback loop is important. And we call it a feedback loop, and we've been calling it different things for lots of different reasons, because the feedback loop happens in different times of the project. So the first feedback loop is what we've changed drastically in the last year or two, and it's made a very big difference. And we should have done it at the beginning. We just didn't think about it because it's kind of dumb and kind of easy. You include your passive house consultant when you start your design. And it's so easy because what you'll find is that passive house becomes expensive when you have to go backwards. And passive house gets left to the side, or any other high performance building gets left aside when the client gets annoyed, or it's too hard, or it's too annoying. And it becomes all those things when you go backwards. So including your passive house consultant early allows you to do things like know where you can put the big windows, know where you can't put the big windows. Include your client in the conversation so they know where you can do them. And before you show them a design that they then can't have, you learn these things and you show them the initial designs that they can have, and you include your passive house consultant in the conversation. Not only do they know that it's a beautiful thing, but they know it's going to perform well. And coming back to the initial benefits that they're going to get by doing a passive house, they want it because they want all those cool things that they're going to have, in the fresh air and the comfortable house with barely any heat and no bugs and dust. And so they're into it. So including your passive house consultant early and really taking this into account, and orientation of the house if you're not a row house, it is a game changer. It is the thing that lets people just sail right through and forget that you're doing a passive house. The client just forgets about it. It's really, really nice. And it's an easy first step. The next one I put in every presentation. It is the secret sauce of construction life, which is the projects in our world that go well are the projects with weekly meetings. And the projects that don't go well are the projects that don't have weekly meetings. And it is that simple. Yeah, you can go to bi-weekly if it's a slow project, but weekly is better, even if it's a phone call. What did you do last week? What are you going to do in the next 2 weeks? What do you need from us? And again, it allows you to not go backwards, but as Kevin Brennan and a bunch of other people say, passive house is a team sport. So it means that as you're doing your passive portion of your project, which is only 20% of your project, it means that they're not going backwards. Everybody's on the same page. You know what you're doing. If there's a complication, you're good to go. So the next is blower door testing. Coming back to the same issue of having our passive house consultant come in early, we're doing our blower tests early now as well. We did this after our first house wasn't very easy, and we did have to go and find needles in a haystack. And we had a fantastic client and a fantastic team who let us do it. But it was painful. It was like a month or more, and it was horrible. And it cost us all a lot of money and all a lot of time. And we still did it because we had a great client who wanted it. But I mean, that's not sustainable. And it's so easy to fix it. Do a door test early. Do the blower door test before you even get your windows in. Plastic the windows. It's more work to do that. Not a lot, but a lot. It's more work to do it. Plastic the windows and do your blower door test early, and then keep the blower door test or the blower door on site, and then do the blower door as you're installing windows. So in townhouses, we're going top down. And so the contractor just turn it on at the end of the day. And they've installed 6 windows. And if it goes bad, they know they messed up on one window. You're not dealing with a needle in the haystack. And they'll do it again earlier than that. And then coming through while they're installing the windows, now they're all doing the interior framing and framing those outside corners that are just impossible to get into. And they feel comfortable doing the indoor framing while they're installing the windows because they did their blower door test early. And we've definitely dealt with contractors who got a little cocky. They got really excited. I'm the best passive house contractor in the world. And they didn't want to do blower door tests early because they got this. And it's just an important tool. And if you really got it, you do your blower door test early, because it just takes that one needle in the haystack to make it a horrible situation for everybody. Because it means that you left the hole, you left the problem. So nobody wants that, especially when you're working so hard, and it's so easily fixed. So bring your passive house consultant early, bring your blower door test early. 2 lessons that I learned from other architects, by the way. And then finally, the contractor collective. I mean, for me, this is a big deal. We share a lot of our items. I am the founder of Passive House Accelerator. We share on that. We share just collectively with our contractors. And it is something that is copyable. Everybody should copy this no matter where they live. These are contractors who have all known each other, but never really met, who compete heavily on these projects, but never really talk, who we require that if you're going to do a passive house with us, you show up to these contractor collective meetings, where in this case, it's 16 or 17 different contracting teams. We've limited it now to just 2 or 3 people per contractor because it was getting to like 80 or 90 people. The first one was tough. People didn't want to show up. Nobody wanted to share any knowledge. They did it because I made them. And then they were there for 3 hours. The second one was kind of the same. Everybody asked if we could do it at night so we could do happy hour afterwards. The next one was like 100 people. We were at the bar till 1. These are people who never talked to each other before. And at each one of these, we've gotten beat up by the contractors about our details, about what they like, what they dislike, what works, what doesn't work. Oh, this is horrible. This product works better than this product. And they think we don't like it, but we do, because we've got pages of notes that all find their way into our typical systematic approach to doing a passive house, which makes passive house cheaper, makes it faster, makes it better. And the deal is each one of our contractors has to host one of these at their job site next. This way, everybody's got some skin in the game. So for us, each contractor gets these notes. It's excited. We share it with Passive House Institute. Some of the ideas aren't great. Some of them are really wonderful, but it really pushes it forward, and it creates a wonderful situation. One of the liquid applied methods of kind of installation I learned because one of the contractors sent a group email to everybody telling everybody about this cool new method. That kind of stuff is happening all the time. We've got contractors sharing blower doors because nobody wanted to buy one. It's been fantastic, and it's really helpful, and it should really be copied. The folks at BSMB are doing it. They've been doing it for a little while as well. So it's not necessarily a new concept, but it makes it a lot more fun. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you so much for spending some time with me, and I look forward to talking to you in the future. If you've got any questions or comments, feel free to reach out. Thanks.